Hey, Julia Barzyk here from Wise Investigator. Welcome again to 2024. I wanted to share some thoughts that are a bit of a follow-on to a video I made a couple weeks ago about what we can expect in the year 2024 in the research environment. Now, what I talked about there were trends, and it gave some practical tips for how a PI or someone who's training to become a PI, postdoc, or a graduate student, or anybody really who's working in the research environment, how we could best meet some of the challenges and opportunities that are coming ahead. So I wanted to take some time today to talk a bit about the mindset that we need to be in order to make the most of the upcoming opportunities. And so specifically, I wanted to talk about the idea of resisting and thinking about the things that we all resist in our lives. Some of them are things that are pretty commonly avoided or resisted. And then everybody has their own things that kind of trip them up. So I think we'll find that we share some of these items in common, but we all, again, also have our own activities that, for whatever reason, we don't like doing, we don't want to, we don't look forward to, we have some hesitation with them. And let me get into what these are here, because they're actually related very heavily to what I talked about in the last video. So one would be posting or sharing information about ourselves online. And I'm speaking broadly, so this, of course, would include social media. It would include a website. PIs generally are willing and excited to have a website even, but I find that the websites often are not very heavily focused on the PI. They're more focused on the research, when you really would want a website to have kind of a split focus. Definitely you want to highlight your research on the website. That is important and a great idea. That makes sense. But there also should be some emphasis on the individual, the leader of the group, meaning the PI, on the website as well. So sharing information about yourself, again, either on social media, on a website. Also, the idea of just sharing information about yourself a bit more broadly, because this would include things like updating people within your leadership at your institution, updating sponsors of your results or your activities, updating colleagues who you may not have been in contact with for a little while about what you're doing now. So it could be a private type of an update or sharing of information about you, your accomplishments, things that are going on with you in your career, or again, a specific award, a big paper that's come out, anything like that. The PIs that I interact with generally have a resistance, not everybody, not all of them, and it's all to varying degrees. Some people are resisting that more than others, to sharing information about themselves. Now, the next one that is a big area of resistance, because I have three here, would be reaching out to funders. This is something that PIs usually resist up until they feel that they are, quote, and I have air quotes here, ready to do this outreach. And by being ready, in many people's minds, this would mean reading lots of material, whatever they could find that's related to that program or maybe even the agency more broadly. And it would mean preparing a white paper and often also preparing slides for a meeting. Now, this is way too much work. If you are thinking about wanting to just have a brief conversation with somebody, just imagine that there's somebody at the other end of the hallway in your building, or maybe they're on the floor above you or the floor below in an academic building where there would be like lab and office space. Now, if you maybe don't run into that person every day because they're not right next door to you. They're not a collaborator, but they're someone again in your building. If you wanted to ask them a question, would you prepare slides? No. Would you be nervous and thinking about preparing a document like a white paper or notes even to go and have a meeting with the person who's again on that floor below you in the building? No. I know that you would not, that no one would. That is actually the mindset that you want to get into when you think about contacting funders and anybody who's related to funders, like potential government collaborators. So people who are potential collaborators, really industry, other academics. These should be conversations that you're having frequently. The only way that you can have them frequently is if you are able to have them without much preparation. You could make an analogy to the videos that I make where I don't have a very high standard for my production quality. It's easiest for me to make these videos pretty much in one take. I don't worry about preparing slides to show you in the video. I don't edit the videos generally, except maybe cutting off the front and the back, right? The start and the finish, if those are a little awkward. But if I held myself to a standard of having something that was like ready for primetime TV by having graphics and a B-roll, right, where other stuff comes up on the screen, and re-recording anything where the audio was a little imperfect, I would only be able to make maybe 1 or 2 videos a year because it would be so much work to get to the point of making that video. And then what if the topic were not even of interest to many people, and many people didn't even view the video? Because some people, right, some of my videos have more views than others. Some are more interesting to a higher number of people, but we don't know that. So I'm making the analogy here of just putting something out there. That's what I do. I just put the video out there, see what happens. Some of them result in conversation starting, and others are of less interest to people. But that doesn't matter. The idea is that I'm making it easy for myself to get those videos out. So thinking about the conversations that you want to be having with funders and potential collaborators, you want to be having more of those conversations, and you're not going to be able to have them if you have to do a high amount of preparation before each one. That's just not going to work. You don't have that kind of time. And not only does it take time, it's stressful. So the last one that people are resisting is getting help. Asking for help from, of course, someone like me. I can help you, but I'm not making this video as any kind of a sales pitch for you to use my services, because there are other places that you can get help. Now, they don't provide exactly what I provide, because everybody's going to provide something different, and your institution is going to provide something different than what I provide. But your institution usually will have some kind of help available to you for some parts of the process of applying for funding. It may not be something that's going to take you from identifying funders through making the connections with them, preparing the proposal, having meetings, all of that. I do that with clients, the entire process. But even if you are not working with me, you are going to be able to get support from your institution at some points along that journey towards getting funding. Some common places to be able to get it would be editing a proposal. That would be a fairly commonly provided service. Now, that is going to require you to have planned ahead and have the documents ready, because they're not going to be able to help you with 12 hours notice. So I'm able to help people on shorter notice, but that's because I'm a smaller operation, and your support staff at the university are probably not able to operate that way, given the work environment and the workflow and the number of people that they're serving. So resisting, I would say the big 3 that I see are not wanting to share information about yourself, generally online, but let's not think about it only as online. Share information about yourself, and you can feel self-conscious doing this. The culture of science and engineering that we all come out of is not one that is generally very self-promotional. There certainly are people who promote themselves a lot and well in science and engineering, but say on average, I think it's safe to say that those of us from these fields are not usually very self-promotional people the way people in another industry may be. Reaching out to funders and related folks that could be a stepping stone to funders is another area where the PIs that I work with and that I see and speak with have a big resistance. And also getting help, asking for help. The people who are getting help are actually the people who are most ahead. So if you're thinking that the people who get help are people who are struggling, that would be normal to think that. And if you think about students in school, like young students, maybe 10 years old or something, if they're struggling in the classroom, they may have a teacher or a counselor or staff within the school who would identify that child and say, this person needs extra help because they're having problems keeping up with the material, or just something's not right. Maybe they have learning differences or something like that. They're falling behind and they're not performing as well as their classmates, perhaps. So they need to get help. Once we're adults, we're all much older than 10 years old. We're in a completely different environment. We're not students anymore. And in this case, the people who are getting help are actually the people who are already, frankly, ahead, already in a very good position. And they realize that they can even do even better. They can make their lives easier. They can learn things faster by working with an expert, by asking people for help, asking people for information. Those things will actually accelerate their progress. So it's not a coincidence that people who are willing to say, hey, could you get on the phone with me and let me pick your brain and ask you about your experience with this? Hey, could you talk to me a bit about this idea that I have? And maybe even you could provide a letter of support if it seems like that would make sense at the end of our conversation. Hey, maybe I could hire somebody to help me get my social media going, get my photo done, get my website done, give me feedback on something, like do some editing for me, any of those things. That's the mindset of a successful person who's thinking bigger, who's thinking there are resources out there. I can use those to advance myself even more. So they're getting help, again, not because they're struggling, but because they're doing well, but they may feel that they could even do better. They could even want to do better. So to wrap up this video on resisting, I would leave you with this one thought. So if you find yourself resisting any of these three items, or all of them perhaps, or more, we all have things that we resist. Think about how reasonable it is to expect your situation to change if you don't change what you're doing. So if you don't change what you're doing, yet you still want to have a better year, yet you still have specific things you want to accomplish this year that didn't work out, you didn't accomplish them last year either because you didn't get around to doing them because you didn't have time, or you did them and then you didn't get the result you wanted. If you go along doing the same things this year that you did last year, there is no reason to think that you would actually get a different result, right? The only way you could get a different result is just hoping and praying that the winds blow this way, and they blew this way last year, and maybe they're going to blow this way this year, and you could just be carried along, or something could come on the winds and deposit into your lap. But I know that if you have made it as far as you have in your career, that you're not a passive person. You're not just waiting for the environment to change, waiting for, again, the winds to blow a different direction and drop something on you. So the only way that things will actually change is if you change what you're doing, and that would lead to a different result. So these items that we resist, there are reasons for that. And I think a lot of them are overblown in the individual's mind. Because with all of these items, I work with clients who, when we get through some of these, especially all of them, but I'll just speak briefly about the conversations with funders and related types of people. Again and again, clients report back to me that they're having these conversations. And once they actually do go ahead and have them, that these folks were so nice. They're excited about the technical conversations they have. And there's usually some combination of reporting back on a conversation that's, oh, wow, we got into this really interesting, exciting technical topic, and we just kind of went off on that for the call. And, or this person was really nice and supportive. We went over the time allotted. They explained all of these different steps to me in a very patient and thoughtful way. And I feel positive. I feel like I know what's going on now. And I know that I can reach back out to that person. So many of these things have just become a bit overblown in the individual's mind in terms of how difficult they believe it will be or how scary it could be to put yourself out there. But once you actually do these things, you'll find it's not a big deal at all. So again, those things that we're resisting, they're things that we usually need to do in order to get that result that we're looking for. So I invite you to think about those things and think about if you are ready to stop resisting, go ahead, make those changes, take those actions, and have a great year because of it.